Okay, guys, welcome to Science Today. If you go into Google Classroom, I posted a video in there, and that video is in reference to these first, I think there's 9 or 10 questions. So you can go back, watch the video, and go ahead and answer these questions. So today we're doing, if you look up the top here, it's on Darwin and evolution. So that video talks about evolution. So there's 9 questions, and then the answers are all right here. So, but I want to do a little bit of this reading. So this is, says a bird with many beaks. So when famous naturalist Charles Darwin, who helped develop the theory of evolution, visited the Galapagos Islands in 1830, he made an interesting discovery about native birds. He noticed that 13 different species of finches were all very similar, but different in the size and shape of their beak. Some of the birds had long, thin beaks, while others had short, thick ones. Others still had shapes somewhere in between. Darwin hypothesized that these species all came from a common ancestor, a single species of bird that later evolved into the 13 distinct species he had observed. But how and why did this happen? And why did all the birds not have beaks of the same length? He said Darwin noticed that each of the species occupied separate islands in the Galapagos. On each of these islands, the finches subsisted in different types of food. On one island, for example, they lived on grubs and other small insects, while on others they ate fruits and nuts. Darwin then made an important connection to the shape of the finches' beaks and the kind of food they lived on. Each beak, he realized, was suited to their diet. Darwin observed that the finches with long, thin beaks lived in places where they had to reach between rocks to gather insects, while finches with thick, claw-like beaks lived on islands where they used their beaks to break open nuts. Now, excuse me. Now, someone else might have just considered this a remarkable coincidence, but these finches turned out to be crucial in helping Darwin shape his theory of evolution. Darwin realized that birds had grown beaks specialized for their environment because nature had forced them over many generations. Long ago, birds with many different types of beaks had probably been present on each island. However, over time, the birds with beaks better suited for each of the island's food supply, for example, a bird with long, thin beaks on islands where insects were prominent, had flourished, while finches with other kind of beaks had dwindled. Over time, the poorly suited finches had died out altogether, leaving only those finches with the proper adaptation to thrive. The process by which certain biological traits, such as beak size, become more or less prominent in a specific environment is known as natural selection. It says natural selection is based on the idea that animals with specific biological traits are well suited to survive in an environment, reproduce at a much faster rate than animals with the biological traits are poorly suited for environment. Eventually, this means that the population of animals with well-suited biological traits will entirely replace the other animals and may become extinct. This may take hundreds or even thousands of years to happen. The result is a situation which Darwin observed in the Galapagos with many different species well-suited for the environment. Without evolution, there would be no natural selection. And evolution refers to the process by which traits inherent to a species of animals change and sometimes grow more specialized to the environment. For example, one theory that scientists have proposed is that humans evolved from a common ape-like ancestor. It is believed this happened as the humans gained larger brains' ability to walk upright. These traits made them better able to reproduce than apes with smaller brains and poor posture, allowing the human population to grow. These evolutionary changes sometimes occur randomly. For example, a single member of a species may undergo a sudden mutation like in X-Men comics, and it gives a new ability. Sometimes some scientists believe that long ago a single ape creature mutated so that it walked upright instead of on all fours. That ape continued to reproduce as ancestors developed other mutations until they became us, humans. However, because an individual member of a species undergoes a mutation, it does not necessarily mean that the rest of the species will die off. Apes continue to breed and survive in this day. We can see examples of natural selection elsewhere in nature. Let's examine insects. One of the greatest threats to the insect population the last few centuries has been the use of pesticides. Pesticides are designed to kill all a particular species of an insect. However, if a single insect in that species undergoes a mutation, which allows him to survive the pesticides, then he is uniquely qualified to reproduce. And as he reproduces, that trait is passed on to his children and their children, and so on. Eventually, the population of insects that have been killed by pesticides fails, while the population of those insects immune to pesticides rises, just as the population of thin-beaked finches on islands with insects rose, while the other kind of finches fell. Charles Darwin may have been the first to describe the process of selective breeding, but the practice may be more than 2,000 years old. The Romans are said to practice selective breeding among the livestock, showing favors to cows that produce a lot of milk, but it wasn't until the 18th century that farmers began practicing on a large industrial scale. Because insects breed very quickly, they're able to evolve more quickly too. Some insects are born, breed, and die all within a single day. This means you have 30 generations of mosquitoes born within a single month. By contrast, 30 generations of humans who only breed about 12 years of age, and usually much later, would take centuries to be born. That means that natural selection occurs more quickly in insects than in humans. A single insect that is resistant to pesticides may produce hundreds of thousands of descendants in a single month, allowing the population of immune insects to increase quite rapidly. For humans, any genetic mutation would take thousands of years to reproduce in a similarly large number. However, sometimes evolution can work faster than we expect. More than 100 years ago, Darwin made a discovery with the finches. Two scientists, Peter and Rosemary Grant, returned to the Galapagos to take a closer look at the finches. Beginning in 1973, the Grants began to mark, weigh, and measure many of the medium ground finches, a specific species of finch on one of the islands. Dafan Major, that was one of the islands. Did this every year and then compared the results of the previous year. These finches almost had no natural predators, so survival is based mostly on the availability of food, which usually is based on the weather conditions on the island. For several years, the Grants noticed few dramatic changes in the traits of these finches. Then in 1977, the island underwent an enormous drought. For almost 2 years, it did not receive a single drop of rain. Many of the plants on the island died, and the food available to the birds decreased. The finches had grown used to eating small seeds, but suddenly only large seeds were available. However, birds with small beaks were unable to crack open these seeds. Only the birds with large beaks could. The birds with large beaks thrived, while the birds with small beaks starved to death and died out. The next year, the Grants returned and measured the beaks of the next generation of birds. They noticed that the average beak size of the finch was 4% larger than the beaks of the grandparents who have lived before the drought. The drought, the Grants realized, had accelerated natural selection, so the profound change occurred in merely a few years. Over the next 30 years, the Grants observed the beak size of the finches changing many times, usually in response to the change in the food supply. In this way, they are able to document how natural selection and evolution occurs in a natural process, in which species react to changes in its environment. Okay, so that reading is just going to cover these, I think there's 10 questions, and the answers to the questions are all right here. So I would go back, watch that video, and then answer the first part of this unit, which is right here. And then you can reread what we read, and then there's questions that follow that. All right, you guys have a wonderful day. I'm going to start social studies here in about 15 minutes. Hopefully I'll see you. If not, have a wonderful day. Bye.